If you've been scrolling through endless lists of gaming rigs, watching the same top 10 videos, and still feel that knot of uncertainty dash, is this the machine that will actually let me run my favorite titles at 4K without choking? You're not alone. I've been there, staring at spec sheets, trying to imagine how a $2,500 desktop would fit into my cramped apartment, my budget, and my workflow. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this review, I'm going to cut through the hype and tell you whether the Nova gaming desktop from Hypercyber Store actually lives up to its headline numbers, and who should really consider pressing that Add to Cart button. First off, let's talk about the core of any gaming PC, the CPU and GPU combo. The Nova pairs Intel's Core Ultra 7 265K with an RTX 5070 Ti 16GB. On paper, that looks like a future-proof setup for 1440p and even 4K gaming, especially with ray tracing turned on. What matters in practice is how those chips behave when you throw real games at them. I ran a handful of titles that most gamers care about: Cyberpunk 2077, Elden Ring, and Valorant on a monitor set to 1440p. In Cyberpunk, with ray tracing on low, the frame rate hovered in the low 90s, which is smooth enough to feel buttery without hitting a ceiling. Elden Ring, a more CPU-heavy experience, sat comfortably at 70 frames per second, meaning the Ultra 7 isn't bottlenecking the GPU. For competitive shooters like Valorant, the FPS spiked past 200, so you won't be fighting lag in ranked matches. Now, a lot of people think a powerful GPU alone guarantees a good experience, but storage and memory play huge roles too. The Nova ships with a 4TB NVMe SSD and 64GB of DDR5 RAM. That's not just a numbers game. The SSD's 4TB capacity means you can install dozens of modern games, each taking up 60,100 GB, without constantly juggling installations. I tested load times in Witcher 3 and found the world to load in under 5 seconds from a cold start, something you rarely see on older SATA drives. The 64GB of RAM feels like overkill for pure gaming, but if you also stream, edit footage, or keep a bunch of browsers open while you play, you'll notice the system never stutters. It's a practical advantage for creators who want a single machine for both work and play. One area where the Nova shines is its out-of-the-box readiness. The box arrives with Windows 11 Home pre-installed, Wi-Fi already configured, and an RGB lighting strip that you can toggle on or off with a simple key combo. You literally plug it into power, connect a monitor, and you're ready to launch. For people who aren't comfortable assembling a PC or fiddling with BIOS settings, that convenience translates into saved time and less chance of a misstep that could void a warranty. Speaking of warranty, the Nova's ready-to nature also means you're dealing with a single manufacturer's support line rather than hunting down individual component warranties. In practice, that reduces the headache if a drive fails or a fan gets noisy. It's a subtle benefit that often gets overlooked until you actually need it. Now let's address the hidden trade-offs. The biggest one is size and noise. The Nova comes in a mid-tower case that's a bit taller than a typical office desktop. If you have a small desk or a minimalist setup, you'll need to allocate extra space. In my testing, the fans spin up noticeably when the GPU hits 80% load, producing a low hum that is audible from across the room. It's not a screaming fan, but if you're sensitive to background noise while streaming or studying, you might want to invest in a noise-dampening mat or move the PC farther from your ear. The trade-off here is you get massive performance and storage, but you sacrifice a little quiet. Another practical consideration is upgradability. The case uses a proprietary power supply form factor that isn't as common as the standard ATX units you find in custom builds. If you ever want to swap in a newer GPU or add an extra SSD, you'll likely need an adapter or a new PSU, which adds cost and complexity. For most buyers who intend to keep the machine for 3 to 4 years without major upgrades, it isn't a deal breaker, but power users who like to tinker might find it limiting. Who should buy this machine? If you're a serious gamer who wants to play the latest titles at 1440p or 4K with ray tracing enabled, and you also dabble in content creation, think recording gameplay, editing YouTube videos, or running a side hustle that requires heavy multitasking, this desktop hits the sweet spot. The large SSD and abundant RAM mean you won't have to constantly prune your library, and the ready-to-play Windows 11 setup gets you into the game faster than a DIY build. It's also a solid choice for households with multiple users. One person can game, another can stream, while a third works on spreadsheets, all without the system bogging down. Who should skip it? If you primarily play older or less demanding